Good afternoon and welcome to the Living Well program. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 on Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org. My name is Cammie and I'm here again with my co-host Betty. Tell us how you're doing today, Betty.
I am doing very well, Cammie. Are you?
I am doing great. You don't have any coffee today?
Nope. I have ice water. Lots of ice.
Yeah, because it is a hot day, isn't it?
I don't think the air conditioning's working in here.
You don't?
Remember, we've always brought blankets. I brought my blanket to cover up, and it's not cold in the studio today.
Well, maybe it's just because summer's on its way, so we're warming up in here, aren't we?
Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. Well, I'll tell you what, we have got such an exciting program for you prepared today, and I'm just going to say this. We have got Alice Baum with us in the studio. She is with Cornerstone Counseling, a licensed professional counselor. We are just so delighted to have you with us today, and I'm going to say this. If you're out running errands and you're in your car, sit in the parking lot for a good 30 minutes and just tune into this show. I have no doubt that some women are going to find some helpful advice and information. We're going to talk about things that women struggle with on a daily basis, depression, and next week we're going to cover anxiety, so stay tuned with us the following week as well. We're going to have Alice back for a part 2 show. Alice, thank you for being here and welcome to Living Well.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I've got to tell you, we have tried for how many months to work this out?
Probably 3 or 4 at least.
At the minimum. We have tried over and over and over to get you in here, and I am so grateful and so thankful you're here today. Looking forward to everything you have to share with us. So, Alice, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got, tell us a little bit, are you married, do you have children, how you got into the profession you're in at the moment?
Well, I am married and to a wonderful man named Richard. We've been married for 36 years. I hesitate because I don't always remember as it gets longer and longer, but upper 30s, 36, 37 years. We have 3 wonderful children, married and live here in Anchorage, and have one wonderful, the smartest granddaughter in the world.
I just told Cammie one day we've got to do a show on grandchildren.
Yes,
because they are I have 4, and they are the best.
They are the best part of life.
One day I'll get there, I suppose, and
You've
I'll
got time,
be able
though.
to validate what you're saying. Yeah, I do have some time.
Plenty of time. So, Alice, how did you decide, what made you decide to become a counselor?
Many times we choose a career based on things that's happened to ourselves. Years and years ago, I had 3 children, a husband, and I was trying to do life, and felt like I was just walking through quicksand, trying to do my life. I didn't realize that I was in depression for a while until I started having some suicidal thoughts. And that's when my husband took me to a counselor, and I began working on some childhood issues and working on my thoughts and in this depression that I have. I remember sitting, just like it was yesterday, sitting at the corner of Northern Lights and New Seward, and a song was on the radio that was talking about you can't move where God is and stay where you are. And so I said, how we always do, we say that prayer, Lord, if you will help me out of this depression, I will use it for you one day. Well, of course, our God is faithful, and he did get me out of depression, and that was about 30 years ago. And so I, just went on about my life and didn't think about that promise that I made to God. He fulfilled his promise, but I hadn't yet fulfilled mine. So about 2004, we were living in Texas, and it was again where God said, hey, what about that promise you made me about helping others the way I helped you? And so I went back to school, and then we moved back up to Alaska, and in 2012 I got my master's in professional counseling, and then in 2014, I believe, I got my LPC license, my licensed professional counseling, and which allows me to be a counselor.
That is quite a story.
It really is.
I have to applaud you for your perseverance,
Yeah.
for going back and getting your degree. That's great. And you had 3 children, and you were married.
And 50.
And 50. That just makes all the difference in the world. I mean, I'm so proud of you
Well, thank
for doing
you.
that. Today we're going to cover a topic that many, many, many women struggle with, depression. So, Alice, define depression for us. Tell us, what is depression? And we're not talking about having a bad day. We're not talking about not feeling good for a couple of days. We're talking about clinical depression, correct?
Okay. Well, depression is a common but a very serious disorder. It's a mood disorder. It causes severe symptoms. It affects how we feel. It affects how we think, how we handle our daily activities, such as sleeping, eating, working, just everything about us. The mood disorder will affect us. And so to be diagnosed with depressions, the symptoms must be present for 2 consecutive weeks.
And what would be the symptoms? What?
Well, the symptoms, we were going to get to those in a little while, but that's fine. Symptoms for depression, you need to have a depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day. There needs to be some significant change in your interests, things that you have always liked to do. All of a sudden, you don't want to do them, so you lose interest or pleasure in activities. There's often a change in appetite, which then causes weight gain or weight loss. There's typically changes in your sleeping pattern. Either you want to sleep too much or you can't sleep enough. You have a loss of energy. You're easily fatigued. You're restless and you're irritable. You have feelings of anxiety. You also feel this sense of worthlessness, hopelessness, helplessness. How can I get out of this feeling? Many times you have this inappropriate guilt that you place upon yourself, and difficulty thinking and concentrating. I'm sure you've heard women depressed talk about, oh, I just cannot keep my mind on one thing at a time. I am so confused all the time. And then many, many people have thoughts of death or suicide. So those are the symptoms and the signs. These are the things that we as counselors and doctors use to identify depression and then be able to treat the person with depression.
I'm sorry. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Tammy.
Betty. Alice, would you be willing to share with us what you were experiencing when you said you were going through depression? What were some of those symptoms that you felt?
Well, I did definitely. I always described mine as I felt like I was walking through a fog. I had unhealthy ruminating thoughts. I did feel that hopelessness and worthlessness as I was going through that. The place where it became dangerous for me was I had suicide ideation. I wanted to kill myself. And I knew I couldn't kill myself because I had 3 children and I loved them, and I knew I could never do that. So every night when I went to bed, I prayed that God would take my life.
Oh, my.
And then when I wake up in the morning, I would cry and say, you won't even do that for me, God. And so I was just lots of despair, lots of hopelessness.
Thank you for sharing. I
You bet.
appreciate that.
Working at Cornerstone Christian Counseling, I'm sure there are many times that you can bring God's Word into your counseling and when you're speaking into your clients, your patients' lives. Does the Bible say anything about depression? Is there a verse that you go to? Or can you share that with us?
You bet. Yes, God says quite a bit about depression. The Bible shows that depression can strike anyone. It strikes people like Naomi, the mother-in-law of Ruth, and very rich people like King Solomon suffered from depression. Young people like David, and then old people like Job were definitely afflicted. Depression strikes both women like Hannah because she was barren. And the prophet Jeremiah, he was called the weeping prophet. Understandably, depression also strikes right after a defeat. And we see this when David and his men reach Ziklag. They found it destroyed by fire. They found their wives and their children taken away from them. And Scripture says that David and his men wept aloud until they had no more strength left to weep. So it definitely strikes everyone. No one is immune to depression. Discouragement and depression are normal parts of the human being. They can be triggered by the death of a loved one. They can be triggered by a loss of a job, a loss of a dream, divorce, leaving home. Many traumatic events can lead us to depression. The Bible doesn't show God punishing his people because they were sad. Rather, the Bible shows God as a loving, caring Father. One of the greatest truths in the Bible is that God is our hope, and when we are in trouble, including depression, he tells us, he gives us a great promise. When depression hits us, we are to fix our eyes on him, and on his power and on his love for us. Deuteronomy 31:8, this is one that I do share with many people. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. Great promise that he gives us.
I think I have those verses highlighted in my Bible.
You probably do.
When I get discouraged, I will go and read those. Are there different kinds or different types of depression?
Yes, there are. I'm going to just name a few of them. There's the clinical depression that you mentioned at the beginning, Betty, that it's considered a major depressive disorder. You have very severe symptoms that interfere with your ability to work and to sleep, study, eat, and enjoy life. Some people they have an episode of a major depressive disorder one time in their life, but most people have more than one. They have multiple episodes of a major depressive disorder or a clinical depression. There's also dysthymia disorder. Dysthymia is depressive symptoms that last a long time, at least 2 years or more. Some people, it lasts their entire life. And but the symptoms are a little less than a major depression. That some of my clients have described it as a depressed state and mood that is always the same. There's not a lot of ups, there's not a lot of downs. It's always the same. I think Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh is a good example of someone with dysthymia. He's just always the same, always down. Then there's postpartum depression. Women are particularly vulnerable to depression after giving birth because of the hormonal and the physical changes. And here you have this new little baby with great responsibility. You are completely responsible for the caring of this newborn. Many new mothers experience maybe a brief bout of mild mood changes, and we sometimes call that the baby blues. They usually last about 10 days or so, but postpartum depression lasts longer than 10 days. It goes on much longer, and acute postpartum is a much more serious condition that requires active treatment and emotional support for the new mother because it is much more serious. There are adjustment disorders. We call them adjustment disorders with depressed mood. And these are similar to major depression and dysthymia, but the symptoms aren't quite as severe as they are, and they usually don't last as long. Women are prone to depression in menopause. And that is because of the estrogen is rising and falling, and the other hormones are also rising and falling. It's like a perfect storm going on in your body around menopause. And so the scientists believe this is what is causing depression around menopause. And then we are also prone to depression in our older life. And it's often due to serious illness that we have: cancer, diabetes, Parkinson's disease, heart disease. And so many times they trigger depression, or depression sometimes triggers these conditions. And so the depression can make the illness worse, and vice versa. Sometimes medications will act and cause your body to have mood disturbances, which will cause you to be depressed. So yes, there's quite a few.
There are, though I had no idea.
Yeah.
Do you find here in Alaska, especially during the winter, that I guess you could say the rate of depression goes up? Do you see more clients, more women during the winter months?
Yes. Yes, yes, the rate of depression does go up, because then we have the seasonal affective disorder that many women get, and many Alaska women get, because of the sunlight, the light issue that we have here.
Does the light therapies that are available help people get through that? Are those legitimate options?
Yes, they are. The lights that you're speaking of, they have a timed light that is timed, and it's in wavelengths, and it has been proven to help SAD when you use it regularly. I used to have one. I haven't put it in my new office, but lights for my desk, and as I'm working, the lights are turned on. And I always thought they helped.
Wow, that's interesting.
I have heard that was a really effective tool to use. I've never bought one myself, but I've thought about it many times. Are there other tools, other things that can be done to alleviate some of these symptoms?
Yes, there are. Are you thinking medication, or are you thinking...
Sometimes people have said exercise.
Okay.
Getting out, moving around.
Absolutely. I jotted down some things that I tell my clients. One is meditating on God's Word, finding promises that mean something to you. Prayer. Anytime we talk to God, things start happening. So yes, meditating on God's Word. Light therapy that you just mentioned, Cammie. And they're very effective. Exercise about 3 times a week is awesome. Counseling, that's what I'm kind of a fan of. But yes, counseling, helping you with counseling. And then dietary interventions. Doctors like to recommend that we boost that omega-3 amino acid. And so boosting that, reducing caffeine intake, and then following a high-protein diet have all been found to be
I need to write these down. That's what I'm looking for, a pen. Maybe you've already answered this, but I talk to some women sometimes, and they're saying, I'm having a really bad day. I feel discouraged. Things aren't working out the way I want them to. What is the biggest difference between just having a bad couple of days, feeling depressed and discouraged, versus clinical depression?
Well, if you have been diagnosed with a clinical depression, that means that your doctor has thought that you have many symptoms. The symptoms that I listed a while ago, you had at least 5, and 2 of those were the change in mood and the lack of interest in things you were normally have found pleasure. And he also is suspect that your chemical in your brain have depleted, and so you are going to have what we call a clinical depression. Your symptoms are going to be more severe, and they are going to last a lot longer.
And so there's not anything that, I guess what I'm hearing you say, there's nothing that we could do to reverse that, whereas if I'm just having a bad day, maybe getting with my girlfriends, that might help and change my mood, or talking with somebody would change my mood. But what you're saying is it lingers on for a long period of time.
It does. Clinical depression does linger for a long time. When you go to a doctor, if he decides you are depressed, he may recommend you go on medicines, and along with the medicines, he will probably refer you to a mental health professional, because you want that treatment kind of goes hand in hand, because the medicine will take care of the physical symptoms, and the talk therapy will help you with maybe your distorted thinking, because you have some issues that more than likely kind of got you where you are when you're in depression. And so you want to work on both of them. You know, you just can't take a pill to get rid of your depression and think that, oh, okay, I'm good. You still have probably a lot of negative thought patterns and a lot of issues that you need to deal with.
Do most people agree to the medications, or do you have clients that will refuse the medicine?
Yes. Let me answer your first one. Do most people agree? I would say it's 50-50. I have clients. I really encourage clients who are suffering from a clinical depression to consider medication, because it is the clinical is a little bit more severe, and especially if they have suicidal ideation, I encourage them to do that, do medication. When I do, I also do a little sermon there telling them to talk to your doctor about the side effects. All medicines have side effects, and especially antidepressant medications. And you need to know what those side effects are, such as you have headaches. You often are nauseous. You're feeling sick to your stomach. You have difficulty sleeping, or you feel just a little jittery, a little nervous. You're agitated more. You're restless a little bit more. There's even sexual problems. You have a lower libido while on antidepressant medicines. And some medicines are addicting. And so talk to your doctor about these medicines. What I find a lot of times is a lady will go and she will get on depression medication, and then after a week or two she says, well, it's not working and I don't feel good, so I went off of it. And I really discourage people from doing that. Understanding the side effects, you will know that it's going to take at least 2 weeks to a month, maybe even a few weeks longer, for the meds to get in your body and for you to go, wow, I am feeling so much better. I am thinking so much better. It's going to take a while for that to happen. It's going to take about 2 weeks for many of these side effects to relieve themselves. And also an important thing about not going off of the drugs by yourself is these are different kind of drugs. And so your doctor needs to slowly wean you off of any sort of anti-depression medication.
For your clients that do not want to take the medication, what do you recommend for them to do?
Well, I recommend, there's just so many supplements out.
I was going to ask you about that.
There's a lot of them. I made a list of, this isn't an exhaustive list, it's a list that I've heard my doctor recommend to me. I've heard my clients say, oh, it works for me. So I'm going to give a list of 5. The first one being fish oil. Fish oil is rich in that omega-3 fatty acids, and it's a major building block in optimal brain chemistry. So you want something like that that's going to just go and work on that brain chemistry. Then there's B complex vitamins. Basically, they make your body conserve amino acid tryptophan, and it converts as much tryptophan as it possibly can into serotonin. And serotonin is that mood chemical in your brain. So that B complex is converting tryptophan into serotonin. Then there's the 5-HTP, and it also helps increase serotonin. And then there's theanine, and this one, it might be a little confusing, but basically what this one does, it works by calming our neural transfers. Nope, that's wrong. Neurotransmitters, which works to calm our bodies and reduce anxiety. So that's the importance of the theanine. And then the one that I talk about daily, and that is vitamin D. Vitamin D helps our body combat anxiety and depression. It is like our warrior vitamin. We need it so it will fight off these moods. Us Alaskans are always finding ourselves low on vitamin D. And I have sent people to get their blood work done who are depressed. They come back, their vitamin D levels are very, very low. And after a month or so, they're feeling better.
And how much vitamin D do you recommend they take?
Well, I think it depends on the person. I've heard many people taking about 4,000 a day. I take 100,000 a week because my vitamin D, I have a hard time keeping it, maintaining it, and so the doctor just kind of shoots my body full of vitamin D.
I think we're just about out of time, but before we close this session out, Alice, if there is a lady that's listening to us that needs help or would like to talk to you, how could they make an appointment to see you?
You can call Cornerstone Counseling and speak with one of our receptionists, and that number is 907-522-7080, and ask to see me.
Okay. And that's Alice Baum. Alice, thank you for being with us. And don't forget, ladies, we'll be back next week with part 2.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Living Well. You can find us here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. on KATB 89.3 in Anchorage, as well as KJLP 88.9 in Palmer. You can also catch us online at katb.org.